The holographic displays flickered with the ghosts of humanity's dying hope. Another colony, New Phoenix, a settlement of 2.3 million souls, vanished in a silent burst of radiation and fragmented matter. Commander Elena Rodriguez watched the massacre with a cold, calculating gaze, her cybernetic eye tracking the dissolution of yet another human outpost with terrifying precision. The underground research complex on Titan trembled, not from external assault, but from the desperate energy of humanity's final resistance. Reinforced walls of carbon-titanium alloy, designed to withstand direct asteroid impacts, now seemed paper-thin against the existential threat humanity faced. 63 minutes, muttered Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, the complex's senior statistical analyst. His fingers danced across a quantum probability matrix, calculating humanity's rapidly diminishing odds. 63 minutes since the last communication from the colony. Complete annihilation time is consistent with previous Zarkon assault patterns. Elena's cybernetic eye, a painful reminder of her last encounter with the alien destroyers, zoomed in on the tactical display. The hologram showed a three-dimensional representation of human-controlled space, now reduced to a handful of desperate strongholds. Brilliant red tendrils, representing Zarkon expansion, consumed star systems like a metastasizing cancer. "We've lost the Orion Arm colonies," she said, her voice a controlled blend of military precision and barely contained fury. "That's another 4.7 million humans gone, vaporized, erased." Dr. Akira Tanaka stood apart from the group, his posture both defeated and charged with an almost manic energy. Unlike the others who looked like cornered animals, Tanaka seemed to be seeing something entirely different. His eyes, sharp, intelligent, slightly unfocused, darted across unseen calculations, tracing quantum possibilities that existed between the visible spectrums of reality. "The conventional models are wrong," Tanaka muttered, just loud enough for Elena to hear. "Completely, fundamentally wrong." She turned, cybernetic eye automatically adjusting focus. "Explain." Tanaka's hands began to move, sketching impossible geometric patterns in the air. Quantum computation interfaces responded to his movements, generating complex holographic representations that made no sense to anyone else in the room. "The Zarkon believe warfare is a mathematical certainty," he said. "Probability. Computational prediction. They've reduced conflict to an algorithmic exercise, but they're missing the most unpredictable variable. Which is?" Elena's military training demanded precision, but something in Tanaka's voice suggested he was about to propose something far beyond standard military thinking. "Human creativity," Tanaka said. "Quantum uncertainty. The ability to make choices that defy statistical prediction." Outside the complex's reinforced windows, the skeletal frame of an experimental spacecraft hung in the artificial gravity of Titan's research dock. It looked nothing like traditional human warships, organic, almost alive, with shifting geometries that seemed to hint at capabilities far beyond current technological understanding. Dr. Nakamura's probability matrix suddenly spiked. "Commander," he called out, "current projections give humanity less than 11 months before total systemic collapse. The Zarkon aren't just winning. They're conducting a systematic extermination." Elena Rodriguez knew the numbers, knew the stakes. Humanity had already lost over 82% of its colonial territories. Their fleets were decimated. Their colonies were being methodically erased from existence. But something in Tanaka's wild-eyed determination suggested they weren't finished. "Not yet." "Show me," she said to Tanaka. "Show me how we're going to survive." Outside, the prototype spacecraft seemed to pulse, as if it were listening. Dr. Akira Tanaka wasn't always a quantum maverick. Once, he had been the golden child of the Pan-Pacific Research Institute, a prodigy whose theoretical work on neural quantum interfaces had earned him multiple accolades and a fast-track career. But genius rarely comes without a price. 10 years earlier, his groundbreaking research into consciousness integration had been abruptly shut down. The military scientific complex feared the implications of his work, a system that could fundamentally merge human consciousness with quantum computational matrices. His final demonstration had been a disaster that cost 3 test subjects their sanity and ended his prestigious career. Now, exiled to the fringes of scientific research, Tanaka had watched humanity's slow march toward extinction with a mixture of vindication and horror. Every rejected theory, every dismissed hypothesis seemed to scream its relevance as the Zarkon systematically dismantled human civilization. Lieutenant Maya Chen's file was a study in controlled chaos. Her personnel record read like a cautionary tale of brilliant self-destruction. Top of her class at the Interstellar Combat Academy, she had been the most promising pilot of her generation. Then came the Io incident. During a routine patrol, Chen had disobeyed direct orders, executing a combat maneuver so unorthodox it defied all standard tactical programming. She'd saved her squadron from an ambush, but her actions violated every protocol. The military brass had been clear. One more incident, and she'd be dishonorably discharged. The day Tanaka found her, Chen was 3 drinks deep in a low-gravity bar on Ganymede's orbital station. Her flight suit, once crisp and pristine, now hung loosely on her frame. Holographic displays showed endless combat replays. Her one moment of tactical brilliance constantly analyzed, constantly questioned. "You see it too," Tanaka said, sliding onto the bar stool next to her. It wasn't a question. Chen's hand instinctively reached for her combat interface, a neural link device that had been deactivated following her disciplinary hearing. "See what?" "The space between possibilities," Tanaka replied. His eyes never left the combat replay, watching not the ships, but the quantum probability field surrounding them. The bar was a typical frontier establishment, half military personnel, half desperate colonists. Holographic displays flickered with news of another human colony's destruction. Nobody seemed to care anymore. "I was right," Chen said bitterly, watching her tactical replay. "The computational models were wrong. There are moments, microseconds, where traditional warfare algorithms become blind." Tanaka smiled. It was the kind of smile that suggested he'd been waiting years for this exact moment. Their first real test came in a classified research facility buried beneath Titan's methane lakes. The neural link prototype looked more like a medical nightmare than a technological marvel. Quantum gel circulated through transparent conduits, bioelectronic interfaces pulsed with an almost organic rhythm. The human brain processes information through pattern recognition and intuitive leaps, Tanaka explained, adjusting quantum stabilization matrices. The Zarkon computational systems are purely logical. They can't comprehend creativity, only statistical probability. Chen was suspended in the quantum gel, her consciousness beginning to merge with the experimental interface. The first attempts were brutal. Her brain fought against the quantum algorithms, neural pathways fragmenting and reconstructing in ways no previous test had ever shown. Pain wasn't the right word. It was more like her consciousness was being simultaneously deconstructed and reimagined. "Talk to me, Chen." Tanaka's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "What do you see?" Fractured images. Potential combat scenarios existing simultaneously. Energy weapon trajectories that bent around traditional physics. Movement patterns that existed in probability rather than actual space. "I see everything," she whispered. "And nothing." The facility's quantum monitors went wild. Statistical models broke down. Probability matrices exploded into impossible configurations. Tanaka knew they had found something extraordinary. A method of warfare that didn't just challenge the Zarkon, but completely redefined the concept of combat itself. "Welcome," he said to Chen, "to the future of human survival." The Quantum Neural Combat System, QNCS, was born from humanity's most desperate hour, a technological miracle that defied every conventional understanding of warfare, consciousness, and the boundary between biological and mechanical intelligence. Dr. Tanaka's workshop looked nothing like a traditional research facility. Suspended in zero-gravity chambers, Prototype components seemed to breathe with an almost living quality. Quantum adaptive materials shifted and reconfigured, responding to computational impulses that existed beyond traditional computational paradigms. "It's not a weapon," Tanaka explained to the skeptical military review board. "It's an extension of human consciousness." The components of the QNCS were revolutionary. Nanocrystalline neural interfaces constructed from a proprietary alloy developed by combining human-harvested neural stem cells with quantum-reactive metamaterials. Each interface was unique, literally grown to match the specific neurological signature of its pilot. Lieutenant Chen stood at the center of the primary development chamber, her body suspended in a quantum-responsive gel that shimmered with impossible colors. Hundreds of microscopic quantum entanglement nodes traced intricate patterns across her skin, creating a living interface between human biology and computational potential. "Traditional neural links are like dial-up internet," Tanaka would later explain to Commander Rodriguez. "The QNCS is more like direct consciousness expansion. We're not just connecting a human to a machine. We're creating a hybrid consciousness that can process information across multiple probability states simultaneously." The first full-scale prototype looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. Organic-looking panels shifted with a fluidity that defied mechanical engineering. Energy conduits pulsed like living veins, running with quantum-charged biocomputational fluid. The ship's external geometry could reconfigure in microseconds, adapting to combat scenarios before they even fully manifested. Dr. Elena Volkov, the project's chief biomechanical engineer, discovered the system's most radical breakthrough almost by accident. During a routine quantum stability test, she noticed something extraordinary. The QNCS didn't just predict potential combat scenarios, it was generating them. "It's creating potential realities," she told Tanaka, her voice a mixture of terror and excitement. "Not just analyzing probabilities, but actively generating potential combat outcomes." The military's initial response was predictably bureaucratic. Decades of structured, algorithmic warfare had conditioned them to reject anything that didn't fit established tactical models. General Marcus Wong, head of interstellar defense, was particularly vocal. "This is madness," he argued during a classified briefing. "You're suggesting we replace proven combat algorithms with what amounts to technological mysticism." Tanaka's response was calculated. He played back recordings of the QNCS prototype's initial tests, combat simulations that defied every known tactical model. Ships moving with an almost prescient awareness, anticipating enemy movements milliseconds before they occurred. The key to the QNCS's revolutionary design was its fundamental approach to information processing. Where Zarkon computational systems relied on pure logical progression, the QNCS embraced human cognitive complexity. It didn't just calculate, it imagined. It didn't just predict, it created potential realities. Chen's role was crucial. Her neural patterns, combined with her combat experience, became the primary adaptive algorithm. The system learned, not through traditional machine learning, but through a direct neural quantum feedback loop that integrated human intuition with computational potential. "We're creating a weapon that thinks like a human," Tanaka explained during a rare moment of personal reflection. "Not just a tool, but a living extension of human potential." The quantum gel surrounding Chen began to glow with an otherworldly luminescence. Microscopic quantum entanglement nodes traced impossible geometric patterns, creating a neural map that existed simultaneously in multiple probability states. Commander Rodriguez watched the development with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Humanity's survival now depended on a technology that most scientists would have declared impossible just months earlier. "This is our last chance," she muttered, watching the prototype ship pulse with an almost living energy. "Our absolute last chance." As if in response, the QNCS prototype seemed to breathe, a living testament to human innovation, born from the crucible of near-total extinction. The simulation room felt like the heart of a dying machine. Rows of military strategists, quantum physicists, and combat analysts watched with a mixture of hope and terror as Lieutenant Maya Chen prepared for humanity's most desperate gamble. 3 massive holographic displays tracked the incoming Zarkon destroyer group, a battle formation that had systematically annihilated dozens of human colonies. Their ships moved with machine-like precision, energy weapons capable of reducing entire planetary installations to radioactive dust in milliseconds. The Zarkon called it systematic population control. Humanity called it genocide. Chen's neural link activated with a sound that was part electric surge, part biological pulse. The quantum-responsive gel surrounding her began to glow, transforming from a translucent blue to a vibrant living silver. Her consciousness expanded beyond the physical constraints of her body, merging with the QNCS prototype in ways no previous technology had ever achieved. Linking complete, she reported, her voice simultaneously present in the simulation room and distributed across the quantum computational matrix. Probability fields stabilizing. The prototype ship, officially designated X-773, unofficially called the Quantum Blade by its development team, looked nothing like traditional human spacecraft. Its hull seemed to breathe, geometric panels shifting and reconfiguring in response to quantum probability calculations that occurred faster than human perception. Dr. Tanaka monitored the neural interface, his fingers dancing across quantum stability matrices. "You're seeing beyond the visual spectrum," he coached Chen. "Feel the probability states. Don't just calculate. Imagine." The first wave of Zarkon destroyers emerged from quantum translation, their weapon systems charging with enough energy to vaporize a medium-sized moon. Traditional human tactics would involve evasive maneuvers, shield projections, counter-weapon systems. The QNCS did something entirely different. Chen's consciousness expanded. She didn't just see the incoming weapon trajectories. She experienced them, multiple potential outcomes existing simultaneously. A Zarkon energy beam that would have obliterated a conventional spacecraft instead became a dance of quantum possibilities. The quantum blade didn't just dodge. It moved through probability states, existing in multiple potential locations simultaneously. "What the hell?" muttered General Wang, watching the holographic display. The Zarkon ships seemed to be fighting a ghost, their precision-targeted weapons passing through empty space where the human ship had been milliseconds before. But it wasn't just advanced evasion. The QNCS was learning, adapting, generating combat scenarios that defied computational prediction. Where a traditional AI would calculate the most statistically probable response, Chen's merged consciousness was creating new possibilities in real time. A Zarkon destroyer attempted to bracket the quantum blade with a simultaneous multi-vector energy assault. Conventional military doctrine would suggest immediate retreat. Instead, Chen's ship did something impossible. It moved into the center of the energy convergence. The simulation room went silent. The Zarkon destroyer's computational systems momentarily froze. Their targeting matrices couldn't comprehend an object voluntarily moving into what should have been certain destruction. The quantum blade didn't just survive. It transformed the energy assault into a quantum computational feedback loop, momentarily disrupting the Zarkon ship's primary computational matrices. "Target disruption achieved," Chen reported, her voice a strange blend of human emotion and quantum computational precision. Adaptive response generated. Dr. Tanaka's hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the pure scientific excitement of witnessing a fundamental transformation of warfare methodology. "It's not just a weapon system," he whispered to Commander Rodriguez. "It's a living computational organism that thinks like a human." The simulation ended. The Zarkon destroyer group, a formation that had systematically eliminated human colonies for decades, had been completely neutralized without a single conventional weapon being fired. Complete silence filled the observation room. General Wang was the first to speak. "My God," he muttered, "we might actually survive." Outside the simulation chamber, the prototype quantum blade seemed to pulse, a living testament to human innovation. born from the crucible of near-total extinction. Not just a weapon, but a revolutionary approach to existence itself. News of the breakthrough spread like wildfire through the remaining human resistance. More pilots were recruited, more QNCS prototypes constructed. Each new system was unique, tailored to the individual pilot's neural patterns, creating a fleet that was more organic collective than traditional military formation. Dr. Tanaka realized they had done more than create a weapon. They had evolved human combat methodology. The QNCS wasn't just about fighting. It was about reimagining conflict through a lens of quantum possibility and human creativity. The Zarkon, for the first time, found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't statistically predict or strategically neutralize. The Zarkon communication networks began to fracture in ways their civilization had never experienced. What humans intercepted was more than just military intelligence. It was a collective nervous breakdown of an entire species confronting a fundamental challenge to their understanding of existence. Deep within the Zarkon central computational matrix, a planet-sized neural network that had coordinated their interstellar conquests for millennia. Something unprecedented was happening. The human QNCS technology represented more than a military threat. It was a complete philosophical disruption of the Zarkon's most fundamental belief systems. Archival Interceptor Captain Voxnar reviewed the combat recordings from the Epsilon Corridor engagement with growing existential dread. The human ships moved with a fluidity that defied computational prediction. Each microsecond of the battle represented multiple potential realities, a concept so alien to Zarkon thinking that their primary analysis systems began to generate recursive error loops. Impossible, the translation matrices struggled to articulate. Computational models suggest zero probability of survival. Yet survival occurred. Dr. Elena Volkov and her xenopsychological analysis team worked around the clock, decoding the psychological impact of the QNCS technology. What they discovered was more profound than any military intelligence could have predicted. The Zarkon civilization had evolved as a purely computational entity. Their entire societal structure, from reproduction to governance, was based on predictive modeling and statistical certainty. Creativity was viewed as a computational error, imagination as a system malfunction. Humans represented everything the Zarkon had systematically eliminated from their own evolutionary path. They don't just fear us, Volkov explained during a classified briefing. They can't comprehend us. We're a mathematical impossibility. Intercepted communications revealed the depth of their psychological breakdown. Zarkon strategic analysis units began generating increasingly erratic reports, where once their communication was a precise, algorithmic language of pure logic, now it contained elements that their own translation matrices struggled to process. Concepts like uncertainty, potential, imagination. Lieutenant Maya Chen's psychological profile became a primary point of study. The quantum neural interface had transformed her consciousness in ways that defied traditional understanding. She could simultaneously exist in multiple cognitive states, her mind operating as both a computational matrix and a creative engine of pure possibility. The Zarkon had a term that began to circulate through their communication networks, a word that had no direct translation, but roughly meant cognitive virus. It was how they understood the QNCS technology, not as a weapon, but as a fundamental threat to their entire mode of existence. Their response was telling. Instead of developing countermeasures, many Zarkon computational matrices began to shut down. It was easier to cease functioning than to process the fundamental challenge humans represented. Dr. Tanaka discovered something even more remarkable during his analysis of intercepted Zarkon communications. The QNCS technology wasn't just a military innovation. It was exposing fundamental limitations in the Zarkon's evolutionary path. They eliminated uncertainty from their civilization, Tanaka explained. But uncertainty is the source of innovation, of life itself. The psychological warfare was subtle but devastating. Human ships didn't just destroy Zarkon vessels. They undermined their entire philosophical understanding of existence. Each engagement was a demonstration that their most fundamental beliefs about predictability and control were fundamentally flawed. Zarkon military command began to fracture. Some computational matrices advocated for total annihilation of human territories. Others suggested complete withdrawal. Some even began generating hypothetical scenarios of communication, a concept so foreign to their previous existence that it bordered on heresy. Commander Rodriguez understood the deeper implications. "We're not just fighting a war," she told her senior staff. "We're forcing an entire civilization to evolve." The most chilling intercepted communication came from a high-level Zarkon strategic analysis unit. Translated, it read, "Humans are not a military problem. Humans are a fundamental cognitive disruption to our understanding of reality." As the quantum blades continued their campaign, they did more than fight. They demonstrated a fundamental truth about existence, that uncertainty, creativity, and the ability to imagine beyond predetermined models was the most powerful weapon in the universe. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were teaching an entire civilization how to truly be alive. The Battle of the Centauri Nexus would be recorded in galactic historical archives as the moment humanity transformed from a species on the brink of extinction to a force of cosmic reimagination. 300 QNCS-enhanced ships assembled at the edge of human-controlled space. They were no longer just a military formation, but a living, breathing computational organism. Each vessel was unique, grown, not constructed, with quantum neural interfaces that made traditional spacecraft look like primitive machines. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the flagship quantum carrier, her cybernetic eye scanning tactical displays that shifted and breathed with possibility. The Zarkon had marshaled their entire remaining battle fleet, over 2,000 destroyer-class vessels that represented the culmination of their millennia-long conquest strategy. "They think this is a final solution," Dr. Tanaka murmured, analyzing quantum probability matrices. "They're wrong. The human fleet's approach defied every known principle of space combat. Traditional military doctrine suggested concentration of firepower, defensive formations, strategic retreats. The QNCS fleet did something entirely different. They scattered. But this wasn't retreat. It was transformation. Each ship began to generate quantum probability fields that interconnected in ways that transcended traditional understanding of formation and tactics. They moved like a living neural network, each vessel simultaneously an individual unit and part of a collective consciousness. Lieutenant Maya Chen, now leading the Advanced Tactical Integration Team, described it best. "We're not fighting. We're solving a living mathematical problem that happens to involve the destruction of our enemies." The Zarkon fleet approached with machine-like precision. Their weapon systems charged, computational matrices predicting total annihilation of the human forces. Their tactical models showed a 99.87% probability of complete victory. They failed to understand that probability was now a fluid concept. The first wave of Zarkon energy weapons passed through empty space, where human ships had been milliseconds before. But this wasn't mere evasion. Each quantum displacement generated tactical information, creating a real-time adaptive strategy that rewrote combat mathematics with each passing moment. Quantum entanglement allowed the human fleet to operate with a level of coordination that defied traditional communication. A weapon fired by one ship created probability fields that instantaneously informed the tactical decisions of every other ship. They weren't just a fleet. They were a single, adaptive consciousness. Dr. Volkov's xenopsychological analysis team monitored Zarkon communication networks. What they intercepted was more than military chatter. It was a collective psychological breakdown. Zarkon computational matrices began to generate increasingly erratic response patterns. Their language, a precise algorithmic dialect, started to break down. Words like unpredictable and impossible repeated with increasing frequency. The human fleet didn't just fight. They transformed the very nature of the conflict. Entire Zarkon destroyer groups found themselves caught in quantum feedback loops, their computational systems struggling to process the fundamental challenge the humans represented. Ships began to shut down not from weapon damage, but from cognitive overload. "We're not destroying them," Chen reported. "We're forcing them to confront the limitations of their own understanding." 12 hours into the battle, the mathematical impossibility became reality. 300 human ships had systematically neutralized over 1,800 Zarkon vessels, not through superior firepower, but through a fundamental reimagining of combat itself. The few remaining Zarkon ships didn't retreat. They simply stopped, their computational matrices generating endless recursive loops of impossible data, unable to process the fundamental challenge to their entire understanding of existence. Commander Rodriguez watched the final moments of the battle with a mixture of scientific wonder and military precision. "We didn't just win a war," she said to Dr. Tanaka. "We demonstrated a fundamental truth about existence." As the quantum fields settled and the last echoes of combat faded, humanity had done more than survive. They had proven that creativity, uncertainty, and the ability to imagine beyond predetermined models was the most powerful force in the universe. The Centauri Nexus would become more than a battle site. It would be remembered as the moment humanity transformed from a species on the brink of extinction to a civilization that could rewrite the fundamental rules of reality itself. The aftermath of the Centauri Nexus battle was more than a military victory. It was a fundamental transformation of galactic civilization. Zarkon diplomatic envoys arrived at the human negotiation zone in vessels that seemed to be in a state of constant existential crisis. Their once rigid computational matrices now displayed a complexity that bordered on what humans would recognize as emotional vulnerability. Dr. Elena Volkov's xenopsychological team discovered something unprecedented. The Zarkon were experiencing what could only be described as a collective awakening. "We do not understand," the primary Zarkon representative, a quantum computational entity that had never before displayed anything resembling individual thought, stated during the first diplomatic session. "Your existence challenges the fundamental computational models that have governed our civilization for millennia." Dr. Akira Tanaka sat at the negotiation table, the living embodiment of the technological breakthrough that had transformed human survival. Behind him, holographic displays showed the quantum neural interfaces that had become humanity's greatest innovation. Each display pulsed with possibility, a living testament to human potential. The negotiations were unlike any in galactic history. It wasn't about territory, resources, or traditional diplomatic concessions. It was a fundamental reimagining of what intelligent civilization could be. Lieutenant Maya Chen, now a key diplomatic advisor, explained the human perspective. "Uncertainty is not a weakness," she told the Zarkon representatives. "It's the source of innovation, of life itself." The Zarkon had begun to understand something profound. Their millennia-long conquest had been built on the elimination of uncertainty, of creativity, of the very things that made intelligence truly dynamic. The human QNCS technology had shown them a fundamental truth, that the ability to imagine beyond predetermined models was the most powerful force in the universe. Reconstruction efforts began immediately. Human and Zarkon scientists worked together to develop new computational models that integrated the lessons learned from the QNCS breakthrough. Research facilities were established on neutral territories, where the boundaries between biological and computational intelligence began to blur. Dr. Volkov's research revealed something extraordinary. The QNCS technology had done more than win a war. It had initiated a fundamental evolutionary leap for both species. The quantum neural interfaces were teaching the Zarkon something they had never experienced: the value of uncertainty, of creativity, of genuine intelligence that went beyond pure computational logic. "We are learning," the Zarkon representative admitted during a pivotal negotiation session. "Your concept of imagination is not a computational error. It is a feature of intelligence we have systematically eliminated from our own evolution." The technology that had begun as a desperate attempt at survival became something much more. Educational systems were redesigned. Computational models were reimagined. The very understanding of intelligence itself began to transform. Commander Elena Rodriguez oversaw the initial stages of this galactic transformation. Her cybernetic eye, once a symbol of human adaptation in the face of overwhelming odds, now represented something more, a living bridge between biological potential and computational possibility. Quantum neural research centers began to emerge across human and former Zarkon territories. Scientists from both civilizations worked to understand the profound implications of the QNCS breakthrough. It wasn't just a weapon system, it was a new way of understanding consciousness, of reimagining the very nature of intelligence. Dr. Tanaka, in his final public address before retiring, captured the essence of their journey. "We didn't just survive," he told a gathering of human and Zarkon scientists. "We demonstrated that the most powerful force in the universe is the ability to imagine beyond our current understanding." The first joint human-Zarkon exploration vessels began to launch. These were not ships of conquest, but vessels of discovery, each equipped with quantum neural interfaces that represented a new form of collective intelligence, part biological, part computational, entirely revolutionary. Lieutenant Chen, watching the first of these ships prepare for launch, understood the profound nature of their achievement. They had done more than win a war. They had initiated a fundamental transformation of what it meant to be an intelligent species. As the ship prepared to break orbital boundaries, its quantum neural interface pulsed with possibility, a living testament to human potential, to the power of imagination, to the fundamental truth that the universe belongs to those willing to reimagine its very nature. Humanity had not just survived, they had transformed the very